major thing these days. So I hope everybody's doing good. Tonight, let me just say the Lord, sometimes he's overly gracious about dropping something into your mailbox that can possibly be a great devotion for the day. So this might resonate with all of you, but I know it will resonate with Brian at one level as I get started. I should have called him. I'm going to just preface this with I should have called Brian before all of this happened, but maybe the Lord was trying to do something to help me out. So I titled this devotion Change of Plans. And I know we've talked about a lot of different maybe themes for the last 120 days. I don't know if there's a better one that we could come up with. Change of plans. We've been walking through that in so many ways, not only here, but in our families and in our workplaces and just the day-to-day small little things. And that kind of is where I'll start tonight. So today, I guess to back up, have had a pretty busy week with clients. Tina's business is going bananas with taxes, as you can imagine, and all the other things that come with the month of July already is busy for businesses because of tax season for them and corporate taxes. And so as I've been just trying to help her as much as I can. And so this week we've been pretty busy. We've had still doing a lot of virtual meetings. We had a couple of in-person meetings. And so I have found over the years, anytime that I'm out of the office, so to speak, or at a meeting and not kind of taking care of, some of the things that pile up on the desk that you're like, I know these meetings are great because it helps, with whatever we're all doing, but things kind of pile up at the desk, So today was going to be my desk day. So I got to the office, fresh cup of coffee. I'm ready to roll, and this is where it connects with Brian a bit, and I run into IT trouble 101 here. So I sit down and I'm logging into the server, and I'm just kicked off, just in and out. It just every 2 minutes, I'm getting kicked off of the internet, and I'm like, well. What am I know so little. Brian knows more in his pinky than I do about IT stuff. And so I was like, I'm just going to bail out and call the help desk quickly and see if they can help us, get back on our server. We have a very specific secure server that we use. And so it's basically 9 o'clock, and I figured by 9:30 I had been kicked off the server. I told my wife 25 times. It probably wasn't that, but it felt like. So, and I told her, I texted her, and I said, I've been upset 2.5 million times in the last 30 minutes because this is crazy. I'm like, I don't want to call the help desk, and because now you're on the phone forever. And I thought, well, maybe what I'll do is I will go to channel my inner IT person that I've heard over the years say, have you unplugged it, turned it off, tried it again? So I thought, well, let's go with that. So all the while, I had so many things I wanted to knock out right at the beginning of the day, and you can kind of see where this goes, but change of plans. So anyway, before I called, I told, I was like, I'm going to call the help desk if this doesn't work, but I'm going to try a couple things. And so what was interesting is my phone was working, same server, everything was working. I was like, why do I keep getting kicked off on the computers? And it was multiple computers and different offices. And so anyway, I thought, well, we're going to the field, power it off, power it down, unplug it, let's rebuild it from the wall in and see what happens. And sure enough, it worked. So I didn't have to call them, and that was a huge blessing because I had been on the phone with them this week already, and you're a number on the line for them, and they've got a lot of issues that they deal with. And I was just like, I'm talking to my dog. She's a great office dog, and I'm telling her all the sorrows, and she's a great listener. And so she was half asleep by then. She's an old dog, and so anyway, I was telling her all the stories. But I get all set. I'm back at the desk. Everything's kind of back together. You know how that goes. You're unplugging, and you're making sure there's a good, there's a line from the wall to the computer. I can see it. We're connected. No problems. No easy oops, it didn't plug in or any of that. So I sit down and I'm ready to roll. And I click literally into the first email I needed to respond to, and my keyboard won't work. And I'm like, this is a wired keyboard, no batteries, no wireless. There's none of that stuff. And I'm like, what in the world? So you're You know, nothing. It's just not. It's just there. The cursor's there. Nothing's happening. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And there's a light on it, so I can tell. You know, okay. So Tina had changed out a keyboard a while back, and I thought, well, maybe there's another one that we have, and I'll try another one. So I'm digging through, and I find another one. Well, it's got the old school. It's the HP with like the light purple plug-in and the green plug-in, the circular style, not the USB style. I don't have the old style computer, so I'm like, well, this keyboard's got to work. So I back around to the other side of the desk, through all the wires, and find that looks way better than what the wires behind my desk look. And so I find it, and I'm like, this is plugged in literally right to the computer. I don't understand. So unplugged it, found another USB port, plugged it in, went back around, and it worked. Man, what is the deal? Like I didn't hit it, I didn't yank on the cord, it didn't tweak it. Like why was the keyboard not? What is going on, Brian? Where are you? So anyway, I had you on speed dial, but I survived. But so I sat down, and of course now I literally it was probably 10:30. I think I sent the first email at 10:39 because I told Tina, I'm like, first email of the day, 10:39. What's going on? I was ready to go early, and here I am. And I just thought, I felt the Lord just say, just hang on a minute, just hold up. I want to teach you. I'm teaching you something here. You know, I'm like, okay, I got a devotion to do tonight. I already had something else ready, but maybe that's what you want to do. So. And I don't over spiritualize every moment of my day, and I promise you that. It might sound like, you know, here we go, plug it in the computer, and how's this going to work? How are we going to connect this? But I thought what was interesting is the internet. I knew it was working fine. I mean that was not the issue because my phone was cranking right along. You know, everything was good. I had Spotify on a small my little Surface right behind me, cranking right along. I had worship music just going right. I'm like, how is this possible? Like, what is the deal? You know, like how? And my computer is actually plugged in. My Spotify was wireless to the router, which that could be an issue, I guess. But it was like, why wouldn't that break down if the internet weren't down? What's going on? And so I thought, you know, what's interesting is the internet was there. It was there the whole time. Nothing had changed with the internet. Nothing had changed at all with that because I was running all the tests I could think of and had some good proof. And I thought all I did was just kind of plugged in a different spot on the computer that was there. It's been there the whole time. It's just another port, you know. And I thought, I just felt like the Lord was saying, you know, first of all, He's with us all the time. He's with us no matter what. The internet's never shutting down. The Lord is the Lord. If you liken Him to the internet, you're never going to have an outage, you know. And I thought, in that moment, all I did was I just chose a different option, you know, to get this thing to work, and it all worked. I had to unplug a few things. I had to reconnect them. And I was like, you know, I hear you, Lord. You know, there are just times I think when I might get a little bit stagnant or maybe just almost a little bit running down just the same path all the time with the Lord in terms of what I'm doing with my emotional time or what I'm maybe even where I'm reading in the Bible. I might just camp in one certain area, and that's certainly great. You know, I love to read the Bible through, try to mix it up. Sometimes I'll do shorter, you know, 3-4 day or week devotionals, or, you know, just to try to mix it up. But it was just a reminder that, you know, the Lord's always there. He's never changing. He's always with us. But just to get creative sometimes with the Lord, whether it's in our prayer time. I had just coincidentally started, I wasn't using my imprint notebook, but I had a different notebook that I had started this month, just writing just what was coming to mind. First thing in the morning, just what the Lord was speaking to me, you know, and that's been encouraging already. I was talking to, it was actually one of the teachers here at the school, and just sharing a few things with them that the Lord was encouraging me about. They had called about something else and related to business, and it was that very day that the Lord was speaking something, and I just wrote it down. And I just, that seems so simple, but I don't always do that. I love to write and think of myself as a journal person, but I don't always do it. First of the year, I'm like, this is the year 2020. I'm going to journal every day. It'd be awesome to just journal every day. And I don't hit that mark at all. We, in our family, Tina's grandmother, she always journaled, at least as long as I knew her. before she passed, and it was something Tina remembered that she did all the time. It was just something that she always remembered. And when she passed away, that's the only thing that Tina wanted was her journals. And we have spent time over the years just looking through those, and it's hilarious. It's like Tina was actually up today, and and she was raised by her grandparents, and so it's always fun to to read not only the spiritual things, but the things of life, And so I've been trying to do that, and the point was, that there are just times when I think we all can maybe get in. It's not necessarily a bad rut, but I think we can get boxed in sometimes with our time spent with the Lord, and whether that's reading the Word or in times of prayer, or maybe we're meeting with a mentor or whatever that might look like. They're just different things that we can all do to kind of mix it up, and so the Lord was just showing me that in such a real way, and I was thinking of Jeremiah 29. Which I love. There's so many great just individual passages, that we pull out of that text in Jeremiah 29. And this is very familiar to all of us. I'll just read a brief part of it. It says, "For thus says the Lord, when 70 years are complete," and just to recap quickly, I'm sure Matt could exposit this in an amazing way, and probably has. But Jeremiah is writing to the exiles, and he's basically talking to leaders in that community, saying, "Hey, get ready. You're going to be here a while, upwards of 70 years, but the Lord's not going to forget you. He's not going to leave you, and He's going to be there when you seek Him." And that was what jumped out to me. We often will quote Jeremiah 29:11, but 13 is where the Lord says, "You will seek me and you will find me," and that's a very, very well-known scripture as well. But that's what the Lord was bringing to mind, kind of connecting it to. The internet was there the whole time this morning. It was there. Everything was cooking. It was totally good. I just wasn't, for whatever reason, there was a communication breakdown or a breakdown in the connection. And I just needed to just kind of reconnect and take a minute. And I was back rolling with no problems, and didn't have any trouble the rest of the day. It was great. But I just felt like, what a great illustration. Again, whether it's choosing to read, maybe read a book alongside the Bible. I'm kind of the mindset that if I'm going to read anything, I'm going to read the Bible. And if I find myself in a season where, man, I didn't read the Word today, I don't get into wall about that, but I want to make sure that I'm feeding myself the Word. And so I don't often end up in another book alongside it, though I do love to read. I just need to make more time for that. And there are so many great authors that can support, and come alongside our time of studying the Word. And just to kind of bring that around to kind of what we're all walking through as a school, and certainly we take it back to our homes as parents and for our children, and then our workplaces. And oh man, we've been through so much, and I think everybody is saying that in virtually every circle that I'm in. Just, man, and the whole phrase of when are we going to get back to normal, and why all the change, and even tonight, I don't know if you heard me, I was mentioning to a couple of the guys over here, I got a call on the way in, from a family here wanting to know what we're going to do, what's going to happen. Monday's the big meeting in the city, and people, we don't like change. We don't, even a change of what we're currently walking through. Potentially Monday's going to be a change, when that meeting comes. And I'm not going to Walmart if they make me wear a mask, that there's a side of that, and there's another side of, I'll be glad to wear a mask, so we don't like change typically as people anyway, but, often the Lord wants to do something in walking us through change. Not gonna say that necessarily about the masks. I don't know where the Lord stands on masks. Anyway, we're working on that, talking to Him about that. But I read a great blog, to kind of wrap it up. Read a great blog this afternoon, and I wanted to just see what people might be saying about change in terms of Scripture, And there was a guy who I thought did a great job. He said the good news is God is in the business of changing our plans to His plan a lot of times, and that feels rough sometimes, when it's like, when I thought we were going, March 10th, we were getting ready for spring break and we were heading that direction, and then all of a sudden He's like, change plans, world, not only NCA, but world, everybody. And I truly don't believe that I believe the Lord is in all of everything. I believe He's sovereign over everything that's happening, and He knows what He's doing, and He's not made a mistake with all this. It seems crazy. It seems like even our church world is kind of it's in turmoil, and even, it just feels like we're warring against each other in so many ways. We all know that, and I still don't believe the Lord is like, well, I'm backing away and I'm out of here. I think He's in all of this and has a plan for us, and obviously there are so many tragic things happening, but we all had a plan. Our country, even right now, there's plans in different cities. I mean, look what Seattle went through. Good grief, people had some crazy plans in that city, anyway, it's just been wild to watch all that stuff, and yet I highlighted the Lord brought to this gentleman's mind, that is not my plan, is what the Lord's saying. And how many times that hits us right at home? It does me, but wait, that's not my plan. I thought you were going to be doing this, and even personally, I'm doing something completely different from a vocation standpoint than I was 120 days ago, and it's going great. The Lord's helping us, and that was not in my plans at all. And ask any business owner if anything that they're walking through, or pastor, or any of us, was part of what we thought. I don't know anybody that could have predicted, where we would be on July 9th, as opposed to maybe March 9th. It's just been so different for all of us. But we just got to stay focused on the Lord through this, and I'm talking to the choir literally at this table, a group of tables. But we're walking through, again, another month or so, or month and 2 weeks of, there's going to be a lot that's going to change, even from tonight's meeting to next week. We've been meeting as a committee talking about this, and what is it going to look like on reentry, and I bet we're gonna still be surprised with maybe a few things, But I don't believe the Lord is. I don't believe He's just going to let us kind of twist it in. I really do think that as we're seeking Him, as we're all doing that collectively and individually, that He's going to help us. He already has. He's been so faithful, and I'm just reminded today that I was looking back in the little docs that I keep for meeting notes and those kind of things, and I was looking back to. Anytime I just say something about Liberty Campus comes across my mind, I'm like, that is just crazy. All that we just through that season alone was so crazy, and that was a change from what we thought we'd be doing, and I think we have a heritage of quite a bit of change in New Covenant, even in the last 5 years, and I can't speak to far beyond that, but it is, we've just seen God be so faithful, and I was excited today to have an hour and a half of IT trouble after I kind of calmed down for a minute. I made another cup of coffee. Actually, I made 2 today, and it was just good to say, you know what, you're right, Lord. Sometimes we just gotta be willing to take a little bit of change, and it's all good. It's gonna be just fine. So I hope that encourages you. If not, if you have IT trouble next time, you can call me as well. I know exactly what to have you start with, and you can call Brian too if you need to. So anyway, well, let's pray. I know the Lord's going to help us tonight. We've got a lot to cover, and let's just pray and ask Him to help us this evening. Father, we do love you so much. God, we just thank you that you are our loving Heavenly Father. You are sovereign. You are above all things, God, that we walk through, that we have on our minds, on our hearts, Lord. Thank you so much for meeting with us throughout our day today. I know a lot of us have been in a lot of different places today, and a lot of conversations, and Lord, you've been so good to us all, and thanks for bringing us here together tonight, Lord, to meet as a team. Lord, I just thank you for everybody around this set of tables, Lord, for the impact that they've had on my life personally, and on the school, and on this community at large. Lord, I'm so thankful for this group of leaders, and God, I just thank you for a little bit of IT trouble this morning. It sure encouraged me in the end, Lord, that we might have to do something just slightly different to plug in and tap into what you're doing in each of our lives and what you want to do. And we just know that you're always there. God, we know that there's no on and off switch for you, Lord, that you are always here for us. And God, that just gives us so much comfort, even during a crazy, crazy time in our world right now. God, we just thank you that you are the one thing that remains, Lord, the one thing that is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. God, we can stand on the promises of your word. And Lord, I just pray that we would be encouraged tonight, that as we walk through change, Lord, that you would just open up our hearts to whatever you'd want to do, God. There's no way we can make all the decisions that we have made and that we will be making without your help. And so we just invite your Holy Spirit to be with us tonight. Give us wisdom, God, as we process all that you have in front of us, Lord. Thank you for this school. Thank you for our staff and leadership team, Lord, for our teachers and our families, our students, God. Lord, we're just so grateful for every person that is a part of this family. And Lord, I just pray for the homes represented, Lord, around this table and in our school family. God, tonight that you will keep everybody safe and well, and God, you will keep hearts encouraged. I know there's so many thoughts and questions and what's going on in our world, and Lord, I just pray that we'd all just kind of take a step back and just know that you are here, that you're with us, and that you're not going to leave us or forsake us, God, during this season or any time in our lives. Father, we love you so much. God, we thank you for what you're about to do tonight. Give us wisdom as we discuss and as we serve together here tonight. Lord, help us to be unified ultimately and pointing things towards what you would want us to do, Father, at this. God, we love you so much, and we thank you for all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thanks, Todd. Good to be back in person for most of us. Of course, welcome to those who are tuning in via live stream from the NCA community. Vicki is joining us later. Is that correct? At some point? Okay, via the electronic means, but certainly good to be back in the same room, even if it's a different room, it's a different format. So have the agenda prepared. Nothing that I know of that needs to be adjusted on that. So if I could have a motion to approve it in a second. So moved. Second. Second from Bay. All in favor? Aye. Okay. We have the minutes from our June 4th meeting. Anything that stood out as something that needed to be adjusted or a question that came up through those?
I was looking at the attendance for fun, and if my first meeting was September 29th, and this was the June meeting, did we have 12 meetings already?
I count some of those in between meetings as well.
Like the impromptu,
Yeah.
not board meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
This is 2020 has 13 months too.
Feels like it.
As is fitting for this year.
Everything else looked okay to me in there.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We are going to move into our reports. Matt's making his grand entrance again. Okay.
I would want to just, our graduation and our senior breakfast went really well. And it was great to celebrate that. So I just want to make sure and recognize Dawn and all the people that made those events happen. And as I was heading to Virginia for my daughter's wedding, everybody was just kicking in. Glenda was taking care of getting tickets. We found out a few days prior that we could have more people, so we were able to communicate with families that still wanted to have more tickets. And so I think we're able to accommodate that group. And then so appreciate everyone who started. Our speaker was awesome. Sarah Forheads just did an awesome job. We had several of our student speeches were some of the best that we've ever had. We even had a special guest that came in without a ticket that wandered in off the street, and so we had a quick response from what I understand, and really especially Evangel helped us stream that event. And if anybody got to watch the live stream, it was high quality. I mean, it was good, really good. And just so everyone knows, Evangel, our cost for using that facility was minimal. I mean, minimal. It was minimal. So we really appreciate Evangel working with us through all that. So, but it was really good, and we were able to do it in a way that everybody social distanced and be able to go up on the platform, get their diploma, and still, for Dawn and Matt to still recognize students. So it was really good. The only other thing I'd add was just a lot of course, preparation for next year, but we'll get into that here pretty soon. But just appreciate everyone's work to make our seniors' breakfast and graduation just a really great event.
Any questions for Matt? Okay, Marlis, anything to add to your report? Anything to highlight there?
No, I don't believe so. Budget for this year is staying pretty much in line with what predictions have been up till now. And I'm also working on the first trip, but no big details at this time.
Any questions? Okay. Mr. Tuck?
I don't have anything to add, except that how much I appreciate Matt's work of leading up to graduation and that breakfast, even though he wasn't able to attend. I know for weeks and weeks, he planned and did so much to have that. He takes a lot of pride in that being a special time for our kids, and it was an amazing time because of his prep for that. And made my job very stress-free, so I really appreciate that a lot, and I thought graduation was awesome.
I enjoyed the opportunity to stand up there awkwardly as people stepped across. And
You have a little hair.
A lot of nods.
if I were a priest, I might be able to do this.
You get some of them kind
Trying to be responsive to the greeting that I was being given. So,
Yes.
I didn't see a response to our yes when he came by.
I thought you would have tackled it.
well, I was about ready to.
No, we were all getting.
You just didn't know what was better.
It
If
was
you
just,
did, would that cause a bigger scene than?
He was friendly, I think he was waving at you.
Yeah.
it was, and it was,
Lots of people
so I responded, he responded to me. He just kind of, hey. We do need to kind of make note of that just in terms of security wise for next year.
They had some, but he just wasn't right.
Well, we talked afterwards about how one person probably didn't stay outside,
Yes.
really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of- We thought about that.
Mr. Howard?
No, I don't have anything to add to my report. Ryan, I'm sure we'll talk about the turn lane progress.
Yes.
Mr. Pruitt?
I don't have anything to add either.
Questions for principals? For their reports?
It's a good.
All righty, thanks. Linda?
The school picnic has technically been, the big one has been canceled. We didn't feel like that was a good idea. So we are setting up smaller picnics. That's the kind of process we want, like per grade class that week before. It'll be a lot of work for some of us, but it will be smaller groups and it won't be as big, just be a time to gather. My vision for this year is really trying to develop community that we can't get together. So we're working really hard with our parent team, we're kind of restructuring that. Our goal is to have people that are willing to reach out to our parents on a regular basis, either call them, send them cards. We're kind of looking more for shepherding kind of thing. We know we're gonna have parties or events, so everything's just kind of open there, but also working with Big Pixel, we're gonna try some new things this year, trying to bring people from when they first look at us, how to draw them in closer. So we're doing some inbound marketing. We're also working on, I'm sure Brad will do this too, but we're working, Kelly's been working on too, the app, looking at getting a new website. On vacation, that all happened, and that was the breakfast and graduation and all that stuff.
Brian?
Let me give you all of my report. Paperwork. So a lot of exciting things going on between the two campuses, as Linda had mentioned. Kelly and Linda's office and Kelly and Derek and myself have met. We're pursuing a new school app. So the old RenWeb home app, if you're a user of the current RenWeb app as a parent, it is being sunsetted. It's going away. It isn't live. So back,
Jesus.
yeah. The new one is really cool. It'll be we're still batting around the name NCA Family App or the Warrior App. We're still trying to brand that properly so it fits in line with our marketing strategy. But Kelly's been working tirelessly on getting the content moved over into it. It's much more pleasing on the eyes, way more easier to use. We're going to use it as kind of our starting point. So the answers to all questions of where can I find an X, the answer is going to be the app. So whether it's a form, a resource, grades, homework, attendance, directory, information, whatever it is, all roads will lead to the app. And that's kind of what we've been looking for. You know, as we remember from our focus group that we did, State of the Academy, we did our little groups and our presentations for communication. So after lots of meeting and looking, we believe that this new app is going to be certainly complement our communication strategy. Secondary to that, we are working on updating our website, and so we'll speak more in the fall about that. That's more of a yes sir.
On the app, with the old one, you only got like one subscription per family. Is that going to be the same or?
Great question. This one is going to be free to our families, so we're going to absorb that cost. One of the things that we found was that $5 price point was actually more of a barrier than it was. So in terms of buy-in from families and parents, that was enough of a barrier that maybe 50-50 on whether people were using it or not. And so we want people to participate in that. So we're gonna take that expense on through the subscription cost. So it'll be free to the families. There'll be no limitations on how many people can have it. You'll still need to use your same remote login like you use today to access that. So whether you're using a browser and a website to access the Redwood Parent Portal or the NCA Family app, you know, same login, still the same stuff, but it'll all be in one place. So, absolutely. And then the website will be updating secondary to that, and that'll come. That's more of a long-term vision plan that'll culminate around the first year. So that'll be about a 6-month plan. And we'll talk more about that and demo that when we get closer to go live for that.
Are there any other graphic refreshes that are going to happen with that website, or are we just going to kind of move what we did last year, update through there?
We're going to take the opportunity to update the look and the feel as far as the marketing and all goes. I mean, we'll keep our seal, we'll keep our branding with the Warrior and the different ones. But Kelly's been hard at work on updating the look of those existing graphics. So it'll be a modernized, updated look. New pictures and new things to really bring that in. If we're going to go all in on that, I figure we need to put our best foot forward and not just carry over the old content. We really need to take that opportunity. People are expecting change right now, so we really have a honeymoon for that type of thing. So if possible, without taking away from or contracting from our other efforts regarding getting school back in session, we'll do whatever we can to make that transition. If you've been at Liberty recently, you've noticed the road has been closed for about 3 weeks. All the prep work has been done, the base has been laid this week, and so asphalting is starting tomorrow. So starting tomorrow into Saturday, that job should be completed, and then the city will kind of construct that for us. And then we'll have a group come back and black dirt it all where they finish up all the dirt around it, and it'll look real nice. The fence has also been removed from the burnout portion of the building. We're working on cleaning up around that and hardy backing over those windows so the broken windows won't be visible. But we've been painting the window seals on the inside of the 5-6 car line. So we've been working on some fascia updates, things like that to kind of to bring that look up as well. So a lot going on over at the Liberty campus. Here, if you've walked up down the hall, there's a lot of things in the halls. We've been redoing floors, and we'll talk about more of this later, but just returning desks and chairs in the classrooms, everything else is kind of being kept down the halls as we kind of figure out what that physical space looks like. The office we've opened up, if you've been in the main front office yesterday or today, we've begun to open up that space as well. So there used to be a supply room there, and in front of Linda's desk, there was another room, used to be Sherry's office. We've taken that wall out, that's all opened up now. Lewis and team has been painting and cleaning that up. They've done a fantastic job. Really, the facilities maintenance custodial guys and girls have been doing a fantastic job of refreshing the buildings. If you walk around, you see the floors are shiny, everything's clean, painted. I can't say enough about the work that they're doing. And it's hot outside, and it's still hard work inside, and they've just been all over making it happen. So I really appreciate those groups. And Derek, too, with technology, he's been working to bring us in line with what's going to happen, whatever's going to happen next school year. But a lot going on around both campuses, a lot of progress. So if people are looking for progress, I mean, just walk through what we're doing. A lot of progress. Working with administrative teams and trying to figure out where people workflows look like and people processes and how we're going to move around the buildings and what those things look like yet to be determined by this group. But we're moving, there's a lot of action taking place, and I'm excited to see that we're not, gripped by fear, or paralyzed or anything. We really are moving forward here to do. So, just a lot of activity going on to prepare and get ready for whatever decisions are made, city, county, state, nation. Any questions about what's going on?
You can handle it.
We can handle it, that's right. We can handle it.
Okay. Any other questions for Brian? Okay.
Look, man, one thing, we do have a meeting next week about our CARES funding. So our CARES funding is the federal money that's coming in, where we will meet with Springfield Public School System, they're our local liaison for the CARES dollars. So we'll be meeting with them next week. The allocations will be posted next week as well, and so we'll be able to meet with them about the appropriations that we make for our school, that program. So we'll know dollar amounts next week, and then we've been reading over the guidelines what those dollars can be spent on. So in our planning sessions and kind of our strategy sessions, we're thinking through what that possibly looks like. We can't count on it until the dollars exist and we have that conversation, but we've been spitballing what our possibilities are in that realm as it pertains to facilities, technology, sanitizing. Those are the types of things we can spend it on. Prepping, planning, coordinating, those types of items. So we are making progress in that realm as well. Down to the wire, but we're making progress on it. So next week we should know more, be able to back to this.
Anything from admissions? Marla Sunderland was not able to be here tonight. Anything that,
Yeah, I think I had a little bit of an updated report. I'm trying to remember which date that was. July 8. It is, yeah, it's fairly consistent with where we've been at. The enrollment's looking probably will be around 610, 615. It stays on course where we're at now. We have the same amount of new students as we did a year ago at this time, which surprised me. I thought there would be a larger difference than that, but there's not as many in process. We did have a number of students that were in process and then just kind of dropped out. The biggest thing that we have seen, and we looked at this last month as well, junior kindergarten into kindergarten and kindergarten into first are the very, for our standards, are really low in retention, 75, 76%. And first going into second is 85%. Those are all just, they've been really impacted by the COVID situation. And evidently that goes back to the amount of assistance that's needed for distance learning and concern about having those young children in doing distance learning. Because when we look at the high school, 12th grade is 97%, 11th is 95, 10th is 90, and 9th grade is 98% retention. So there's most definitely a challenge there. However, when we look at third and fourth, third grade is 98%, fourth is 91, and those are both sections that are built. So people want to be able to stay in the system, and if they were to withdraw, they wouldn't be able to get back in either. So we just, after that, last time we met, we hadn't had that June 15th cutoff yet. So that's when a number of families withdrew. Overall, I would just, I don't think overall that is probably not totally surprising from anybody who's been just listening and understanding what's going on in our culture and what the distance learning, how that impacts families. So that's about what we have. And I will say, way back in the beginning, the finance committee is looking at what would be a good, I hate to say retention, but overall, what would we expect our numbers to drop? And I think 8% was the number we all felt, yeah, it's very likely that could happen. And this is not 8% overall. So I think we are pleasantly pleased with that. I think it's a little bit more like 6% where we're thinking of we're going to end up. And all things considered, I think we are pretty thankful for that.
okay. Thank you for With that, fine arts or athletics, anything that we need to,
Eric had, they had events going on, that's where he's at tonight, so they've been doing open gyms and trying to follow, but they've been doing a good job of following protocols. Eric's been working with or listening to Misha. They've been addressing certain issues in terms of the sports side of it, but more or less leading into the schools as it relates to people coming in our building to attend athletic events, because here, volleyball start, when fall sports start, you've got fortunately, as we start off, it'll be managing sports as far as attendance that don't have as many people coming as it relates to the number of people like we can have in our facilities as we look at ordinances and things like that. But a lot of things going on the Misha side, and so Eric's been on top of that. We've even had just some slight, what happens when you have that first connection to a cage. We already had something like that happened in saw at Nixa. They had a lifeguard. We had a couple of our students who worked there as well. So then the protocol started. They were close contact, so they did their thing. So Eric did a good job of communicating that out to the families of our volleyball players that were attending camp with those students, and said, these are the steps. This is what you need to do. And even since then, our students that were impacted have been so far removed and got a negative test, and so we were able to follow those steps. So that's just going to be the reality. It's not just a matter of, well, maybe it won't happen. It's going to happen. So Eric's been working on just what those protocols are going to look like. So that's kind of where his time's going to spend.
okay, does it for reports. Old business, we had a second read of the policy regarding background checks. Remember that last month we changed the actual company or way that we did background checks. This is related to the actual policy itself. So we had, that information had come to us last meeting. It was provided again as a second read tonight. Any discussion that needs to be had about that policy change? Any questions anybody had about it? Okay, so if we could have a motion to, motion regarding that policy change.
Motion to approve the policy change.
Second from Kendra. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. COVID-19 committee report. Matt and Todd, I will turn it over to you guys. One on my right, one on my left to share.
I'll be the short opening act, and we'll let Matt take it away.
I got a few things.
Yeah. Matt has 4 inches of paperwork. No, I just want to say thank you to everybody who's been, I feel like we're all somewhat a part of the COVID-19 committee because it's on all of our minds, but have appreciated everybody being a part of that, both staff and board, and extending out to our medical team. Thank you, Kendra, for all your help. She's been fantastic to, if nothing else, center us back around some of the true medical realities of what's happening. And we had a good discussion, I thought, the other night, just like to see Kendra on television some, like telling us what's going on rather than all, and we recognize it is a little bit crazy with what's happening, with COVID-19, but there are just some things at times that you can start going down a rabbit trail, and so Kendra helps to center us, and that's really, really been a blessing to have her, and just the connection to the medical community, and there's credibility there with other doctors, and she's been able to quickly even text them that we're going to meet, and then oops, I'm the one that told her we were, and then we moved them, and she got it all moved quickly, so she's done a great job. Thank you so much for your help. So we had a good discussion. Every time we're together, I feel like we can just keep on going to kind of cover any questions and thoughts, and we just kind of let that play out the other night. I thought it was very, very helpful, and we got to kind of thanks to Matt and the team for starting to kind of focus our attention on what is our protocol going to be coming back, and even since that time, I know Matt will report to us on a meeting with the area superintendents, and obviously now the city council meeting will be happening early in the week, so we'll get an update on that. If it's not letting too much of the cat out of the bag, we are talking through, and we'll talk a little more about it. I know a town hall forum, some kind of family meeting, let's call it, in the next few weeks to try to get our NCA family together to hear a little bit about kind of what our plan is. It seems like, at least what I'm seeing and hearing, is the kind of the end of the month is when most schools are kind of targeting to have a plan. So we're right in step with that, and I'm so thankful for Matt's help and leadership on this. So I don't know that there's anything else out. I don't want to steal too much of the thunder, because the thunder has probably changed even since we met. So Matt's been right on the cusp of all the meetings and texts, and was texting Kendra and I the other night. It's just changing pretty quickly. So we will, and I will too here. What do you know? What's the...
Well, so what, I appreciate the committees. We've been updating them and looking at policies, protocols, and there's a lot to kind of dig into, but we definitely want to have a plan to get out to our parents, and that's what area schools, again, and not saying that everybody has to have the same plan, but it's good when one district is communicating, and so other districts know, hey, everybody's getting their plans out there, so you don't have people wondering, what about my district? And so we actually had a meeting on Tuesday where different districts are just sharing, here's how summer school is going, which for us, even though we're not doing summer school, it's very helpful to hear, because you're kind of getting to hear how things are going in those settings, especially the ones that are doing seated, what protocols they're using, what are protocols that are working well for them, what are things that maybe come fall, will they continue those or not? So there's just a sharing of information, and everybody's been really good about, there's a place where we can kind of go and see what everybody else is doing. So that's been helpful. Part of that meeting is the health department has been very involved in giving us updates at the beginning of those meetings, and then also giving us feedback as we ask questions about what some of these look like. And there'll be protocols that you'll see a lot of, like if you look across the country, certain protocols that you see everybody putting in place. And what I appreciate about the health department is when I've asked them the rationale for that protocol, because you don't just a protocol to have it, you want to know, okay, so we're doing this because why? And then when they explain it, you can kind of say, okay, maybe in our setting, that's not really an issue for us. Or if that's what's keeping us from doing this, but we can do this and maybe mitigate that sort. So I had a question for him today, and so he was very responsive and called me back as we look at not just protocols, but why we're doing them, what's the purpose, and if there's things that we need to change. So just to kind of get back to what we want to have for our families is a pretty good, and again, school is still over a month away, so that plan could change, but at least for our families to kind of see what school will look like. Obviously, there'll be some overarching plans that Michael at Liberty might be taking, and this is what these protocols and procedures will look like. Liberty setting, these are what these protocols and procedures look like in high school, with elementary, but we want to get to our parents an overall plan. My goal would be to have something put together by the end of next week to get out to the families, and then look at having a town hall family informational meeting, where we would like to call it, where we would stream it as well as, if possible, and I think we can do this, and I think it would be a very good positive step towards coming back in the fall if we can have that at Liberty and still be able to observe, keeping people spaced out and do what we need to do there. But just to have a time of presenting, people asking questions, having some of our medical subcommittee present to help answer questions. And so we were looking at having that meeting on the 23rd, so Thursday, July 23rd, to have that meeting over at Liberty, just to give our families a chance who want to attend and to watch virtually. The big thing that came up with our meeting on Tuesday was the health department obviously was sharing about the proposal for the city ordinance for Monday for masks, and what I understand is that is very likely to pass. And of course, my question to the health department was, I don't want to just assume things, so I went ahead and asked it. So this would apply to schools within, for that city ordinance. And So that was question number one, and it would apply to schools. And then number two, would that apply to private schools? And just to get clarity on that, and they said it would. And so, and I think for those who haven't maybe gotten all the details, it is, as it would relate to school-age children, age 3 to 11 would be recommended, but not required as far as in the school setting. But 12 and up, mask face coverings would be required. And so if we look at our delineate, you probably, I mean, moving forward, you would probably mask half of your 5, 6. You're going to have some kids that are on that, but I think some fifth graders are probably only 11. Looking at my ages, so those are things that you know, that we'll have to wait and see what happens on Monday. But that is likely. Questions from our parents about masks. I've gotten emails on both sides of it. You know, should, some that we shouldn't. As we look at our plan's focus has got to be on what's best for our kids as far as safety and security, keeping our family safe, our mission, and the third priority is a focus on trying to be here in school, in the classroom. And that is, I care about that most of all. I want us to be here. And so I don't want to go beyond that, but I feel really strongly whatever we can do to help the chances of us being here and not at home, I'm in favor of that. So I know that's a topic that people have a lot of different feelings on, but as it relates to us in the city, it is a requirement, and it will be, and just so everybody knows that. And so we can, of course, discuss that further. But that is, you know, again, working on the plan, working on the protocols, working on what does reentry look like. And so we've gotten those, and you know, the health department will want to have a couple point people for each school. So if they have to be involved with a case and get information, so for New Covenant, I'll be point person number 1, and then Brian will be point person number 2 if they're needing to get a hold of somebody as far as working with the school. What was interesting is as we think about, you know, obviously a lot of the protocols, without going into, and I'll pass it up to the board, just the rough plan. But the most important thing is just going to be teaching our kids about personal, individual responsibility for our families. I think that's going to be the most important thing for our families to know. For us to protect that learning environment, we've all got to work together. So your child is sick or has, maybe being a little more diligent on sending them to making sure they're not sick when they come to school. That's responsibility on us to make sure we're not coming when we're sick. You know, you don't want to lose a teacher for a couple of weeks, and then so we've been looking at what things need to be in place as far as teaching our kids, teaching our staff how to teach our kids. You know, if masks are part of that, what is that going to look like for addressing that? But that's going to be part of that plan, as well as contingency plans to prepare our staff if you have to pivot to virtual, whether it's short term, long term. Again, that's, of course, we don't want that to happen, but what can we do to do that better? What do we need to do when we have small pockets of kids that might be home? We're still in session, but maybe you've got a few students that have to be out for a while. So we've been looking at what can that look like for a student that's at home. You have a teacher that's teaching that class, but that student's gone. Are there options? And Brian, we've been talking about ways to have a virtual buddy. So if Jeff is sick and can't be in his second grade class, we have an iPad that his virtual buddy has on a stand that's focused on the teacher. And so when that teacher's teaching, that student's receiving the instruction. So you don't have teachers that are also having to teach and try to do online instruction for students. So what does that look like? What does it look like if the teacher is out? Maybe they have to be out, but they're still physically feeling fine. What does it look like reverse? So the teacher can still be, supporting the class. So those are all things that we're looking at. And so besides our teachers, we've got facilities and increasing the number of hand sanitizers and foggers. And so those are things that are being worked with. Technology with the CARES money, if possible, to increase our one-to-one ratio with our technology. So if possible, if we have the funding to do that, students have a device. So if they're home, they've got their device, they've taken home, they're not in the classroom, I'm done with it, and now they've got to wipe it off before he gets it. So there's a lot of components to that, but I think getting information out to our families is going to be important. And so that's more or less the plan, to have a rough draft out or a pretty firm plan out at the end of next week, and then a meeting on 23rd. So that is a really, really short version of everything that's going on. There's a lot more to it. But questions?
The only request that I've had, or questions, I don't know how to say it, but it's just like, we are sure praying that school is in session.
Yeah. To me, that's
for 5 days a week. Every parent,
and
there's a dozen different parents that have asked me,
5 times a day.
Maybe even 7 times a week, right? Some people probably take one.
are we gonna, the community is praying for schools to be in session.
So are we. I mean, that's our focus. And again, that goes back to, we want to channel that desire into the, okay, because we desire that, here's the things that we all have to hold hands and be together on in terms of doing each. Well, that's a terrible analogy. A terrible analogy. Man, I can't believe I did that. You get what I mean. We all need to be in one accord. That I mean in the car in one accord. Yeah, but really, we it's all of us doing our part to make sure that happens, and it's going to take everybody doing it. So I'll pass kind of just to give you, and the committee had this, but I'll pass that around to folks just to be looking. The reentry procedures, there are some things I'm not as worried about because those things are being shared. Here's what happens. Here's how this student gets cleared to come back. And there might be situations where somebody might not have to be the full 14 days, if there are certain protocols in place. But testing is going to be important. Responsiveness from physicians or kids getting to their doctors to be cleared to come back. So, questions? Anything else?
Might have said this, Matt. I'm sorry, as I was kind of looking back at our notes even from that night, even in the chat, and I just wanted to reiterate. Marlis had a good point, and I appreciate Marlis because she'll kind of bring that. We're going to have a, I want to call it a legal responsibility. There's going to be some things like that are in play, and she's been working with our insurance team and the legal team, and just, I think the theme was whatever we say we're going to do when we get to that point, we need to be able to do it and execute it. So whatever that looks like, and I think that's what we're all committed to that. And I know our staff, it'll be a lot, but no matter what we say, there's going to be just a lot of things that we're going to say we're going to do because we need to and have to and work together. It's going to be a lot to ask everybody to jump in, but I'm with you, Matt. Anything we can do to do that, will get us back here hopefully. But
from an HR side, there are things that we're going to have to be thinking about. Obviously you have set policies about sick days.
Right.
Well, that'll help us have a lot to be looking at in light of, and just like the focus on attendance for the kids, we probably don't need to be emphasizing any perfect attendance awards or anything like that, because the threshold for a student being sent home is not going to be what it was. So working with Melissa, we've been talking, and this came up with the med team, which was really good feedback when we met within the subcommittee with our parents that are in the medical field. Was when we had a nurse at the other building, protocols for when a student says they're not feeling good and they get sent, we don't want those students, if the nurse isn't here, and of course we'll know that the nurse is at the other building. So if I'm gonna use Jeff again. Jeff's in second grade. His teacher says, Jeff isn't feeling good. They call the front office. Okay, the nurse is at Liberty. So we will have to have designees that would meet Jeff in the nurse's office and then follow those protocols, because you don't want sick kids going into Linda or vice versa going into Monica. So this works at both campuses and have procedures in place that assessing, following those steps, and then also technology that the nurse at the other campus can do a virtual assessment. And so looking at technology, besides just a webcam on a computer, but a camera where they can, so the nurse over there can also give guidance in terms of what that looks like for that student. So it's, my wife's a school nurse working summer school right now. She had her first situation where she had a few kids that had some symptoms that were, you know, what she ran into. They told us that you need to have an isolation place. So if, you know, while we're assessing Jeff needs to be kind of in a different, like a room within the nurse's office or someplace where he's kind of isolated. She had two at one time. So they've been emphasizing you need to have one other space. Well, sometimes you might have to have a second. So those are all things that I think schools are trying to follow, but also getting feedback from the health department. So those are things that we need to think about where the nurse can still give feedback to whoever those designated are. We don't from the office. And so it's just a matter of following those. For the littles, keeping them, you know, on certain sides of the hallways and directionals, what signage can we put up. We know there are situations where you're not going to be able to follow strict 6 foot. There's just not. And in any of the areas, any of the schools that you're talking, that you're doing everything you can within reason. And so we're going to do the best we can. But I think it's just going to get used to following those, and then okay, this is what happens. And hopefully that everything that happens is manageable and doesn't get to the point where it impacts school-wide. So that's everybody's desire. Questions?
Has there been discussion and concern about personal travel time and people who travel? And kind of team discussions about
You mean as far as people that are out of the area and then coming in?
long distances, anything like that?
Only, you know, as far as for the school setting, it's been just personal responsibility. I mean, I know we're not in the school year, but it's like being gone. And I don't know why I didn't think about this. So I'm thinking about my daughter's wedding, and then it's right below. Yeah, I know. Do I look poor? Do I look like my birth is going down? But it's to that point. I didn't think about it, and then I thought, I'm coming back, and I've got graduation and the breakfast. I was thinking, you know, I felt more comfortable laying low and not, but I know that's not going to be necessarily the
Consensus with everyone.
right. So in terms of, you know, do you now there, and I don't know if we get into the screening questions for travel, but as we think about who's coming into the building, that'll be something that we'll be educating our parents, because there will be things that look different. That first day of school might look a little different as far as having people come into the building. Pickup might look a little different in terms of parents standing outside that want to walk their kids. Those are some things that we might start to have to say, we need everyone going through Carlin. If someone's coming into the building, screening questions that we'll be asking. Obviously, if folks are coming in and there's a mask ordinance, you know, ensuring that. But there's some details that we're going to have to be working through. But I'm open to any thoughts that the board has in terms of some of those, because you get into. So if I ask you if you guys have traveled, are we going to say that you know what I mean? Especially if it's to areas that are the hot spots.
I think we're gonna hit that at the first day of school, because everybody's gonna take their, when they travel, it's gonna be vacations, first week of August, and then,
Right.
and I need quarantine the first 2 weeks. Or fall break, whatever.
Other questions? This is a good time to.
I think we're
Our
going
schedule isn't going to be, I know we talked about this briefly, but some of the universities have said we're going to go towards stopping Thanksgiving and taking an extended break, but we haven't considered modifying any of our fall breaks or anything to expand the Christmas holiday. Same school calendar we approved it a couple months back.
Yeah. Bars right.
one of the things that we're going to have to, there are layers of exceptions to the masking thing that I think we're going to have to figure out how to identify and work through, especially if we're doing something along the lines of having our 5, 6, 11-year-olds, because that's 6th grade is that year when you turn from 11 to 12. So kind of asking that question about what does that look like for that 5, 6th grade, but also I know there are exceptions in there for people who have breathing issues, but also even trouble breathing, which I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I just know that there are going to be some of those layers of things. In some ways, it's like the initial stay-at-home orders, where it's not nearly as clean cut as sometimes we might want those things to be. So I think there's just going to have to be navigating through some specific situations that the mask ordinance technically allows for, whether or not, how we're gonna handle those situations. Not saying that there is this is how it needs to be, but just, we're gonna have to think through that as well.
And the principals, just to add, and that just triggered something, the principals are looking at what does that look, obviously for the younger kids, it's what you're trying to keep groups, whether you want to call them a cohort or a family group, keeping those students together as much as possible in terms of maybe teachers coming to them. But as you get older and kids start splitting up, you can't do that. So as Don's looking at split lunch, so maybe there's not quite as many students. That's half the students at any one time. You hate to split a class, and I think Don's even looking at core classes that you would rather not divide, maybe having them eat first, so then their class isn't interrupted. I know they're kind of looking at the same thing, but for some of those protocols, the idea that if there something does come up within that class, that they can safely say, okay, this is the group that's affected, and not outside of that. So that's kind of what the rationale is, and it kind of from there it gets some of the questions I've had for the health department. When you're doing that, what are you trying to prevent? And then are there, if it's passing and you don't want to pass other students in the hall. Well, if Sharon's looked at those kids going to art, are going to be going to art, she's got it where there's no one else in the hallway, can those students still safely travel to that area? You can clean that area before the next class comes in. Does that help where you can still travel? The debate comes into the whole airborne, if there is something still, if you've got a group, you clean surfaces, but what about if there's, and so those are the things that get into talking to the health department about if that's still an issue, or I know I'm looking at Kendra, but and the point I bring up is that we want to make sure that the protocol has a reason, and this is why we're doing it, not just because everybody has it in their plan at every other school. And are there things that for NCA that could look a little different?
So, Matt, is there a date that shows in that ordinance that how long, whatever they do Monday, how long that would go? Does it get into the school, officially into the school calendar yet? Or
It says, this shall be in full force and effect beginning July 16th at 12:01 a.m. and shall expire and cease to be at 11:59 p.m. on the 19th day after passage. It shall be in full force and effect.
we start with 20,
Shall expire and cease on the 19th day.
19 days.
So in 19 days, yeah. So I guess it looks like they're
Or
going to,
they'll revamp it or do something by then.
unless a new ordinance amends. So
Yeah.
it looks like they're doing it for a long time. Good question. I hadn't looked up how long. So, what I saw in the information in terms of they did a vote, I think for the city and for people to say if I'm in favor or not, I think it was for Springfield, it was 75 for, 25 against, but then the call-ins to say they liked it or didn't like it as far as comments, that was about even. And then I know they had a lot of people that are going to be speaking on both sides on it. So stay tuned, but it's, from everything I've read, it's more than likely.
So it'll be 19 days for the month, end of July.
Yeah, it'd be 19 days.
I think it's almost tied with one of the phasing.
Yeah.
I think that
19 days
timing,
from the 17th is the.
and that works to about the 2nd, which I think is the 2nd of August, which is the end of one of the phases.
And again, this is because of the spike in cases.
it'll get amended before 19 days is up. They'll probably second one or the other.
Any other questions? Keeping us busy.
They'll just want to know we were.
We can check the back to school packet was going out July 23rd, right? Like we can.
Yeah, I think what we would look at, since we're starting a little bit later, that back to school packet, obviously with some things that might be changing, we're gonna look at getting that out probably about that time we have, maybe the day after, yeah.
Like I said, this is the first time.
So, and I think one of the things, just just to clarify, are we going to make a position regardless of the city? Or since that is going to be so whatever, are we going to just say our decision about masks is tied to the cities?
Yeah, well, I think I'll return. So,
Okay,
yeah, I emailed him, and basically there is $100 fine for anybody who violates and they can catch it. And there's also a $100, there's also a fine for a business who doesn't respect, I would say, honor what they say we need to do. And the only exception is if there's a patron or customer who refuses to wear a mask, but otherwise there's possible suspension or revocation. That's how you say it, of city's permit or license, plus cost. My computer would say, plus cost to abate the public nuisance caused by failure to comply. So that is from the attorney, because I asked him, how does that fit? And then, of course, the next question would be, you're on that subject, so if school is shut, what happens? If the city says Springfield Public is going to be closed, last time did the city tell, or did they, okay, they didn't, okay. Well, because it depends on what happens there. Right now, since federal is directing that they want public schools open, so we'll have to wait and see how that goes. But if it's I guess the difference is if it's a mandate from the city or from the school decides, and that has to do with the state, federal, everything.
I guess my question even more specifically is if are we going to put something out regardless of what the city says about the mask as far as the timing of that? Or are we just going to tie our policy to what the city has enforced at the time?
I think that kind of gets into a bigger question of if the board wants to make a statement. What I was going to do tomorrow, because I wanted the board for us to talk about that family meeting, but tomorrow I was going to send something out to families that just addressed, again, remind we're working on the plan. Here's the event, put this on your calendar, the rough draft will be coming. I was going to mention, as you know, that Monday there will be, I didn't plan to put here as our stance, but just that we asked if this would apply to New Covenant, the answer is yes. And I was just gonna kind of put it there. Okay. So but anything that would be beyond that, that would be up to you all to give
Right,
direction.
well, and I know that there's a difference between when the city mandates, we don't really have a choice, but I think we have to be kind of cautious about where we go from, where we go if that mandate expires. I mean, I didn't realize it was only 19 days. I agree it's gonna be extended beyond 19 days, but it's still, we're still gonna be a long way from school starting before all that takes place.
I do think we will have to have conversations, just like any business is, what if you have, it's for that person that owns a business and that person comes in without one and they ask them, you need to have it on, and they say no, and they still come in. What's the response going to be? And I know in school that might look different, but we need to be prepared to, this is where our things are, I'm sorry, you can't come in without a mask, and we got one for you. But that is something that, I think has become, a very polarizing topic. And I'm going to add this, as we get our students back, it is, even though it can be easy to shy away from these topics as it relates to culture and rights and what, side of the issue, and to really emphasize, and I know this can get tricky because what does the scripture say? As me as a Christian, how should I be responding? And for our teachers to be able to say, what does scripture say? Not what does political parties say, but what does scripture say? And so we're going to be looking at good resources, obviously scripture, but because our kids need to be processing these things, and we want our kids to think. We don't want our kids to just say we don't want to tell them what to say. We want to tell them how to think for themselves. And so it's going to be a learning moment. And I know it can be kind of scary, and we don't want to go there. That's oh my goodness, this is a great time. Right. And we want our kids asking questions, even if what they're saying is, but I think it's about making sure they're centered on what does Scripture say, and that's a good example, not just for our kids. That's a good example for us. I mean, you can get into what did Christ say about obeying those that have the rule over you. Throw that out there and then see where it goes, because I've seen a lot of threads that people take that to, again, but I say all that to say it's going to be important for us to have good conversations with our kids. Chapel and in classrooms as it relates to this topic, as it relates to culture, as it relates to race, and we stay, again, our core of our whole plan is that to stay focused on our mission, biblical truth. What is that? So,
And I would add to that, and this has just been personal reflection. I'm certainly not a faith means being flippant or foolish, but I do think that on this issue we have become a little bit so caught up in fear on some levels instead of having faith. And that doesn't mean, that's one thing in this whole conversation that from a pastoral perspective I think has been largely missing. Because there have been articles talking about obeying government authorities, and I certainly agree with that. But I also think even from a basic worldview level, we have to also be asking the question, how do we process this from the perspective of those who are in Christ, from a worldview, how we think about death, how we think about God's sovereignty, and that's not to negate all those other issues because I think they're important, but I think it's just a matter of we really have to make sure we're addressing that conversation even from the foundations of faith versus fear, even not just from the foundations of these other things. And I think it's a challenge, it's a challenging issue, and it's a challenging, there's just been a lot of ways where I think we have to be cautious about following along with what we're being told to think in some ways, and having that critical thinking, like you're saying, to be able to work through those things. So it's challenging, it's complicated, and I know sometimes faith gets this impression that says, well, you're going to be foolish and flippant. Certainly don't mean that, but I think there has to be room somewhere in this for a confidence in God, and not to the extent that we're ignoring science, ignoring medical stuff, but at the same time still being able to demonstrate trust, even while we're being wise and shrewd about how we handle things. So it's glad for that committee's work and everything that's being done in that. And I know it's just a challenging time to lead anything right now, and help people process through this. So anything else that you need to add, Matt, committee-wise?
No, Kendra, anything? Words of wisdom. Next time. Next time we'll need a lot of wisdom. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Marlis, Warrior Care Scholarship update and other things that you have that need to be a little bit more attention now.
Okay. I just passed around a little piece of information because when you state all this stuff, it's kind of hard sometimes to follow the numbers. The tuition assistance program that we typically do every year is CAP. The award this year was, we're up to date right now, it's $363,433. And then the Warriors Care COVID-19 scholarship is $73,592 for total awards of $437,025. And to say that, there's a lot of different combinations. And so those who received TAP only were 56 families. Those who received only COVID and didn't qualify for TAP was 15 families. Those that received COVID and TAP was 22 families. So you have a total of 93 families who were took advantage, I shouldn't say took advantage, that doesn't sound right, who we were able to assist in this way. This involved a total of 173 students. And when you're looking at it from a TAP award, the average, just when you look at the tuition assistance program, the average award was $25.26. When we look at this in comparison to last year, we had just over $323,000 in awards, and And then that was with a total of 650 students. Right now, we're more at about 605. And we had 79 families, and a total of 79 families. And this year, we had 56 close to 22. We have 78 families that received TAP only or COVID TAP. So the number who applied, who qualified for just TAP would be very similar with the reduced number of students as well. Then the total number of families we had last year, 79, total students 140, with an average award of 309. We did see some of the changes we made some small changes in the formulas, very small. We never make a large adjustment one way or the other because it kind of, we like to have the steadiness of how the program works. But we did add junior kindergarten this year. Usually junior kindergarten, the numbers are so close that we don't discount junior kindergarten, considering just for a lot of reasons. It has to do, there's 10 kids in a class. If it's the family's first child, and if you're, just how the qualifications go. So we had a number of students qualified for junior kindergarten. I haven't totally analyzed it yet, but it seems we have the lower grades. I would say more families that have the lower income standards. I mean, there's a maximum scholarship that you can receive with depending on your number of children. And we did seem to, I feel, have probably a little bit more of that along the way. For instance, if we had, I don't know, there's just a lot of different scenarios. But we would have, I think some of what plays into it is those who are on a higher income, if they lost their job, the amount of unemployment that they would receive would have far less impact on their financial situation than those who are on the lower income bracket. And some of those in the lower income bracket were actually making more income on the unemployment for these 20 weeks and possibly longer than not. So the effect on people just varies greatly. And but I really probably would have expected more families than that to apply. And I will also express that of those who applied for COVID, there was one family, and I think, like I said, there were, if you look at COVID only, I think there were 37 families. One family did not accept it. They did return, but in my conversation back with them, it was broader than just the money. It had to do with other issues. When they talked to Delana initially, it sounded like it was just the finances. So I called everybody back when they didn't accept and see what we could do. And I did have, after that, a single parent, lower income, who we did really everything we could do, and they realized that this isn't a place where they could be. It was a whole new financial situation, but things had really changed for them. And so overall, there were very few that, they accepted what it was we came up with. And when we came up with the plan, I did the first scenario of how do you do this? You have people whose income may have been $30,000 or $20,000 to start with. We had people who had $300,000 to start with. And and the amount of money or income that they lost varied greatly as well. So ended up with 3 different ways of looking at it, and then had 2 other people assist with it. And as we worked through them, we kind of came to a consensus of where you felt this is landing right. And also in the award letter, it was mentioned that if any questions about the scholarship, you call. So I felt that we gave ample opportunity for people to come back. That we do still have 2 families that are waiting for tax returns to be done and facts to be verified. And we may have more families that can live on that as well. So the budget originally for TAP, or after I reworked the budget and the tuition projections, but if we had 610 students, the normal budget, because we figure a percentage, would have been about just under 347,500. So we didn't go over very much on the tuition assistance, but then of course we did add the COVID care. And then we had, I should have said tuition assistance, I should have said, didn't go over that much on TAP, the tuition assistance program. Because then we have tuition forgiveness, which is the 2019-20 school year. And at the time when this all came down, I said it could be, I would say as much as $50,000 of people who had their accounts on hold and who may need forgiveness. I did require that they fill out a tuition assistance application, just like everybody else. And there were 18 families who did that. And of those 18, sort of been 15 of them that had returning students. And 3 of those were not returning. And they did go ahead and fill out that information. And then what I'm left with, when you see that on there, we had awarded about $29,000 there. And right now I have another 8 families who did not return and did not fill out the tuition assistance form. And I have communicated with them on, I believe, more than one occasion. Yes, I know I have more than one occasion requesting it, and then specifically pointing to them that they needed to do that if they wanted forgiveness. And obviously, it's going to take a little bit more time and probably more conversations to figure out what we're going to do and how we're going to approach it, because there's no response from any of those families. And obviously, with 8 families, that averages about $1,200 per family. So we have that scenario. How that all fits into next year's budget and this year's budget, a little bit of it is depending on how tuition forgiveness, or how the PPP loan is going to work, and how those funds come in, and how they're applied based upon audit recommendations. But if we are to look outside of, we just look at the basic, what does our budget look like for this school year versus next school year? We also said we have about 40 less students, 50 less students, it may be, than what we had originally budgeted. And we also reduced the tuition back to the original amount. And let's see, I printed something off right before I came over here. I haven't looked at it yet again. But nope, it's in here. I have a budget, yeah. I would predict that just based on the operations for next year, just a very big picture, because it's really, you have to dig a lot. We have to be able to dig a lot deeper. We don't have all of the salaries and contracts and everything exactly figured out yet for the year. I would say revenue over expenditures, beyond what was originally predicted at 660, would be about 440,000 short. Okay. And so what does that mean? Tuition, that is where you get into how some tuition forgiveness is going to come into play. And you know that we did the forgiveness and the COVID scholarships and really extended the TAP program just a little bit, knowing that part of our situation was we didn't have these funds. So that will all be a decision that the tuition assistance program, hopefully we can get together this week. I'm certainly telling you about that. We can get together, I mean, next week or very beginning of the week after, and try to come up with some scenarios of what our options may be, how we want to look at it. Because of those funds, this, you know, I would not paint a picture of fear or concern for next year. For this coming year, it'll be fine. But I think the big issue is, what is it gonna look like down the road? How does this year affect the next year and the next? And in particular, I'm not trying to plant doom and gloom, but my initial concern would be the low numbers in the lower elementary, because that is gonna affect the future of school and the growth. And so is this a temporary thing? We just don't know. We've never experienced anything quite like this. So when we have 27 kids right now in K4, I can't remember when, or K5, I'm sorry, they didn't share. I can't remember when we had 27 kids in K4. And so how is that going to affect us long term? And so we just need to be very mindful of those kind of things as we make decisions for next school year. As you can imagine, questions that I've been asked, as I'm sure many of you have, is what if we go to distance learning? Are we going to get a refund as parents? Or I'm going to withdraw now because that may happen. And I think the last week has really spurred the concern again. I think everybody was in a down low mode and everything's going okay, and then it spikes, and then, you know, and it's just game, you know, it feels like we're starting the game all over again. And so those are the kind of things that I think the finance committee will have to look at. As far as me making any statement one way or the other, I think we just have to look at the whole scenario and what would be best for our relationship with our families, taking that into consideration, but also taking into consideration that we are a brick and mortar school. And these times, if we, the decisions we make will affect our school down the road. Either way we look at it, it's going to affect it with our relationship with our parents, which is vitally important, but it's also going to affect it if we're overly generous, kind. And you know what I mean? If you just, we want to please, and that's our main goal, then we could find ourselves in a situation in the next year and few years after that, that would be a challenge to maintain our facility and our staff and our everything that we have that makes NCA the community we are. I say we're like the corner cafe. If we had a corner cafe that we went to, we loved going there because they knew our kids' name and they knew everything about us. And you like to go there because you know they're going to be, just, you know what you have, but it costs to have that for sure. So that's kind of where we're at. And again, I feel we're fine. I think the reduction in numbers does not cause extreme alarm. I think it's to be expected. And I think many other things that we don't know is whether these kind of events that are going on in our country are going to affect more people to make a change towards Christian education moving forward. So we just don't know that. But again, how is it going to affect you financially? So just looking at all those things. I don't know if anybody has any questions or.
All right, thanks, Marlis. A couple pieces of new business, Lands Investment Committee report. Nothing's changed in that realm of anything, right?
Things went down, things went back up. They haven't gone back up as far as they went down, but about 75–80% back up, so that's my report.
That makes my minutes really easy.
Yeah, you're rolling.
We did decide not to take distributions on a monthly basis from that account for a while for the third quarter, just due to everything that's going on. That's it.
All right, handbook summary updates. Anything, is that you?
Kelly's been kind of putting together with the principals. I don't think there was anything that was affecting policy.
No, regarding the student handbooks, it was really just, if you look at them, they're just mostly grammatical things or things that have to be updated as dates, etc. There's some minor things, if anything affected policy, then you'll see those policies come up with next board meeting. But these were just kind of summaries of what we're trying to align our procedures to policies that may have changed before. Like I think we changed there was a MISHA requirement that we changed back in the spring, but we need to make sure the student handbook reflects that change. So it was just items like that, nothing really that.
We probably need to approve these policies, or these, not policies, but handbook changes, correct? Okay. They were in your packet, so any questions or discussion needs to be had about those? Okay. Need motion to accept those?
Motion to accept the changes in the handbook.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, opposed? Okay. All right, that wraps up new business. Thanks for being here, principals, Linda, Brian. We will take about a 5-minute break and then go back into closed session. Did I forget something? Okay. Look good. That's kind of what I think.
Best chair, presenter.